story. Philiph Turle is with me in the studio, our foreign editor. Philiph, first of all, how significant do you think this visit is by the French president?
Well, the first thing is that this is a surprise visit, which is what is being described by the Elysee Palace here, so unexpected, which means that the situation's got so bad in New Caledonia that I think Emmanuel Macron feels that he has to go there to try to diffuse what is an incredibly tense standoff. This is the worst political standoff between the loyalists, those who are in favour of remaining part of France, and the independence supporters, basically the Kanaks, the indigenous population, who are no longer talking to each other and no longer even willing to get round the table to try to negotiate a way out of the standoff that has been in the headlines for at least the last week or so. A reminder that 6 people have been killed so far, including 2 gendarmes. There's a state of emergency in New Caledonia. And I think that the visit by Emmanuel Macron is really a last-ditch effort to try to bring the two sides back to the table to try to find a way out. But it's not going to be easy for the French president because, as was explained in the Figaro newspaper in one of its articles, it says that there have been 7 years of tormented relations between Emmanuel Macron and New Caledonia. First of all, for him not paying enough attention to the importance of the island, and then making remarks that were extremely badly received by the Kanaks, and that's why many of them have voted in favour of the far-right National Front in recent elections. So it's a very difficult situation for Emmanuel Macron to try to master, but I think he feels that if anyone's going to do that, it's going to be him, and if someone's going to have to go there, it's going to have to be him, and that's why he's decided to drop everything and go to New Caledonia to try to find a way out of the current standoff.
Right, Philiph, and this crisis was sparked by a plan by the government here in Paris to make it easier for people from mainland France living in New Caledonia to vote there. That is what ignited so much anger among the indigenous Kanak people there. Given the scale of the anger and the scale of the unrest, is that still going to go ahead?
Well, that's another problem for Emmanuel Macron because he is under pressure not only in New Caledonia, but also here in France, with some saying you have to bulldoze that reform through, and others saying, no, you must delay it and get everyone back to the negotiating table because you've done everything that you said you were going to do, and it's the indigenous population that are not playing by the rules anymore. So it's difficult to see what Emmanuel Macron is going to do. I suspect that he will probably say he's going to delay the implementation of this new policy to try to make some kind of way forward, but it depends whether or not, as I said before, the two sides want to come to the negotiating table, whether they're willing to talk to each other. Just to wrap this up, I mean, to explain a little bit in detail about what the problem is that it all boils down to who is allowed to vote in elections in New Caledonia, provincial elections, the elections that form the government that rules the island in New Caledonia. And there have been 2 different accords which have been agreed between both sides, between the independent seekers on one side and the indigenous population on the other. The first one in 1988 after similar types of violence that we've just recently seen, which were called the Matignon Accords, and another series of accords in 1998 called the Nouméa Accords. And that made it only possible for those who'd been on the island before 1998 to vote in these provincial elections. All other elections, be they legislative, presidential or European, everybody can vote. But provincial elections, it's only those who've been on the island since 1998 or before that that can vote. This time round, what the government wants to do is to make it all those who've been on the island over the last 10 years, or more than the last 10 years, who can vote. What the Kanaks are saying is, well, that's going to bring in an extra 25,000 voters, most of them European or French, and we're going to be finding ourselves in an increasingly small minority, and that's why we're not accepting it. So it's difficult to see what Emmanuel Macron can do, because there's pressure on his shoulders to enlarge the number of voters, because many saying we've been living here for years, we don't have the right to vote, why not? We need to be able to do that. Kanaks saying, well, if you're going to give them the vote, that's not going to go through, and there'll be even greater violence, maybe even civil war. So that's what Emmanuel Macron is trying to work his way out of at the moment. And it's very difficult to see how he's going to make any progress.
Philiph Turle, thanks very much indeed.